The greatest producer I know, Squadda B. My story. When born, we all come with ears and a preference of what we like to hear, making us all musicians and scientists. For insight, I'll start this by giving you some of my background, my experience, and motivation. I'm Squadda B, and I started making music way back in 2004, all the way in North Oakland, California. A day at Carter Middle School would end in a huddle with some friends humming out the melody of Linkin Park Numb over a beat we banged on a wooden school desk. Rest in peace, Chester. For perspective, these were the same years that kids of my situation across America would beat out Clip's then-hit single Grindin' on school tables at every chance we could. I remember noticing how some kids would be a bit more lazy recreating the grinding beat, so I would make sure to perfect my rendition, adding a triple knock the exact way the song would play. I didn't see it then, but I was training my brain early on to bring what I heard in my head to life. Dating back to elementary school, lyrics were always my first love, though my writing first started with short stories and poetry. Soon enough, as my addictions to music videos grew, I found myself writing lyrics for all of my favorite musicians of the time, filling out whole notebooks at a time. As middle school arrived, my appreciation for music as a whole grew to new heights. Now, I'd become just as obsessed in who was behind the songs as I was in the persons writing and performing the lyrics. That same year, I also got to provide somebody with a rap I custom wrote for them to use in the battle rap. Ghostwriting since 6th grade. Soon after 6th grade, via joining rap groups, making and performing our own songs at local talent shows, the idea of becoming the person behind the music became a huge part of the dream itself. While I didn't know where to start, and didn't have enough confidence to dive in head first, I did start to express myself creatively by making mix CDs whenever I was at my dad's house. He had a CD burner and fast internet. My custom mix CDs would be collections of songs that either had the same style or subject, songs from rappers of the same region, or fantasy draft style compilations of my favorite songs out at the time. The more I got into rapping, I turned that procedure of handcrafting mix CDs into making beat CDs for my group to pick instrumentals from. Titles like Zone would grace the disc art, previewing the story of sounds that each CD held. All of this imagining and orchestrating sound banks too would expand later on in my career. Like the previous mix CDs, I end up using that same process of creative thinking when putting future track lists together, whether for an artist project, making beats and organizing them, or choosing the direction to go through playlists when looking for inspiration to create a new bundle of tracks. It goes to show, even when you feel like you're not on a journey, you're still creating your lane. I started my first rap group in 2004. We didn't have a producer, and while we did eventually brainstorm the idea of becoming our own producers, we were stuck in the struggle of making songs without one. We operated by using the instrumentals we found online, or within a current rap single CD, but that lost its appeal fast, and since we knew not one person who made beats, I'd search online for instrumentals and ended up finding SoundClick. SoundClick is a website where producers upload and share instrumental tracks, a lot of them available for free download. I began downloading tracks, then curating playlists of my favorites that had a sound I felt we could own to eventually record on top of them. Seeing new and upcoming producers carve out a lane for themselves online was extremely inspiring for me back then, especially in the era of the expensive, oversaturated super producer. While a lot of the beats on that website were detailed and polished, I find more inspiration in the ones that had some grit to them. It made me feel like I could be a producer too. While tearing up the talent show circuit that year and writing tons of songs in our free time, our middle school counselor, "What's up, Miss Meadows?" hooked us up with an audition for a local TV show named Oakland Idol. To our surprise, we ended up making it through to the finals in the official filming of the show. Even though the show had no budget and ended up being shelved before it was even released, it led us to a major step in the right direction for our career. Our first producer. One of the show's staff liked us enough to drive us to meet with his friend, who he claimed was a talented rap producer. This friend of his at the time went by the name of Velocity Shady Blaze. I instantly noticed once we arrived at Shady's house that he was way older than us, as were the other people with him in the room, but we fit right in musically. To watch Shady Blaze use his keyboard to create the music from scratch in front of us while we came up with a song in our group name, which became my duo's group name after, was not only a positive affirmation, but felt like my first class in rap school with the pros. After that historic studio session, we would lose contact with Shady Blaze and hook up with other producers through friends or family, but nothing was as inspiring as the session we had with the Velocity guy and crew. As 2005 quickly arrived, I got desperate enough to ask a family friend for a Christmas present. Music production software, Fruity Loops. Thanks, Mary. She bought the cheapest version available, but I felt like I hit the jackpot. I was determined, assuming that my group would make our own beats and live out our dreams instantly. What followed next was instant for sure. Instant devastation. The main reason I even bought Fruity Loops was because I always heard it was the easiest thing to make beats on. The majority of local producers I knew at that time had it, while mainstream producers would be ridiculed if they used it for their major label artists' projects because of said easiness. Heck that, I thought. I need it. When we opened up the package and sat down to use it, any energy I had built up swiftly deflated. I couldn't even make a simple rhythm. I was more than confused. I looked up instructions, this was before YouTube, to still be stuck with no clue of how to make it work. Forget it, I thought. I'll stick to rapping. All of this changed the next year in 9th grade when my computer class teacher taught me how to make a beat on GarageBand. This teacher was a super cool guy who seemed to have no business at this particular school. Judging by how he dressed, talked, and his knowledge of GarageBand, he had to have been in a band at the same time. I made my first beat with him, which included nothing but an 808 drum, a hi-hat, a snare, and a weird simple noise melody on top. I took it to my current crew, wherever we were recording at that time, and we all recorded raps on it. Life goal accomplished. Still, my journey wouldn't actually leave the ground until a full year later, when my older cousin Floyd made the decision to get into the producing realm and buy the music production software Reason. I begged him to let me put a copy on my computer, and being the cool cousin he is, he agreed. The day he bought Reason, in 2007, we studied it, and for the first time ever, even after my GarageBand teachings, I felt I knew how to make beats. From the moment Floyd left to go back home that day, I was on a mission to become the greatest producer I know. Now with Reason, I had a bunch of stock sounds that I ventured to master. After a while of seeing how we load stock sounds into Reason, I got the grand idea of loading my own custom-made sounds into the app and started experimenting. I began envisioning what type of producer I'd be, and ideas of samples instantly popped into my head. Beats including samples of other songs were always a personal favorite, so I looked into how I could do it. Since everything that was being used in my favorite section of Reason were wave clips, I looked into how I could turn songs from a CD into wave clips and load them into it. Like magic, the idea worked. From that day on, I was hooked. My mom was a singer and producer, and my dad was a drummer, and to this day, still both are very into listening to music. Needless to say, I grew up with an immense CD and vinyl catalog at both homes. After discovering my wave trick, I instantly started digging into my mom's CDs and burning them onto my computer. I thumbtacked the paper onto my wall to track my goal of how many beats I wanted to make in a day and sought out to achieve higher goals as soon as possible. I made beats all day and every day, soon making full CDs of them the same way I did with mixed CDs at my dad's house. My dreams were quickly becoming a reality. Soon enough, I built the confidence to start showing those beats to the people in my neighborhood who rapped. Some wanted to buy them, and all listened with love and support. One of my friends, DZD, started to rap on a lot of my beats, and he came by one day to show me what he did to one of my latest. With him in the passenger seat was rapper Lil B, who at the time was starting to break away from his famous rap group, The Pack, and kick off a solo career. I was beyond hyped to be in a car listening to a song somebody made on my beat, and we were doing it alongside a famous rapper. Lil B asked me if I made the beats, then told me he liked them. Before leaving the car, I built up the courage to ask him for his number so I could send him tracks, and he gave it to me. I felt on top of the world, especially since this was only my second year making beats. After that day, I called Lil B what felt like every day for months to no answer. So I changed the strategy to hit him up on MySpace until he responded. He told me, let's work. Sent me his email, and I sent beats non-stop. Soon after, I discovered a song uploaded to YouTube with him rapping on one of my beats. Next thing you know, I found another beat on his album and soon discovered a full music video of his including my beat. With all this taking place, I felt like a true producer and started sending beats to more rappers, sometimes being rejected, sometimes landing on projects. The best example being rapper Danny Brown's album, Triple X. In the meantime, my own group started gaining notoriety, with my beats being some of our most known and loved songs. Being a rapper first, I knew that I had a lot of work to do becoming a producer, especially if I was going to compete with others, but I did my best to not let it hold me back so my production could be heard. I work with like-minded people and continue to strive for improvement with every step in my journey. Years down the line, I start to hear from other producers about how much they love my work, and some even telling me that they gained the inspiration to start producing from what they heard from me. I can't explain how crazy of a good feeling that will always be. When I first got the software Reason from my cousin Floyd, I depended on things like Scratch Magazine and books like The Woo Manual. Reading written testimonies from producers in print fired me up, and I thought maybe I could offer something similar. This book you're reading now. What I would love most is for this book to be the source of that same feeling for aspiring and even already experienced producers. I had no other equipment besides CDs and a laptop, so reading magazines and books about other producers using fancy equipment and gadgets to make their sounds made me feel insufficient, but also gave me the inspiration to do the best off of what I had. The fact that I would go on to buy a lot of that same equipment I used to read about off of money I made with my own music production is a blessing and testament to hard work and determination. We're all born with talents, and though society sometimes makes it feel like we aren't good enough to go for our dream, it's our choice whether we believe in that story or we go for it anyways. If I can do it, so can you. Chuch on deck. I've lost a ton of money and opportunities due to my lack of organization. Most notably, before his untimely death, ASAP Yams was inquiring about the stems to one of my classic beats, which I couldn't find for the life of me. I didn't even think to try to remake the beat, which would have been worth a shot, because I felt the intricacies of the sample chops, which emerge organically from the random way I use FL Studio, was hard or near impossible to duplicate. If I just saved my stems, I'd have a paycheck every quarter for life. That moment was very telling and life-changing in the way that laziness and disbelief can and will cost you big down the line. More than laziness and disbelief, plain old disorganization will slow down your progress. When disorganized, you're essentially planning to fail. Say you need to refer to anything for any reason, especially if your productivity rate is high, you're setting yourself up for an extremely hard time. For example, when you're in the studio and need a hook copied and pasted and don't have the accurate BPM ready, it will cost more than time. Sure, the engineer can maybe tap out the BPM or use an app to detect it, but all these things take energy away from the prized and expensive moment. Now's a great time to confess. I am an enthusiast of collecting laptops. PCs, Macs, they all serve different purposes and have their own benefits and quirks in music production. In having this maximal type of workflow, you can imagine the amount of files I have spread around. From sound kits to unfinished beats to finished ones, I'm getting dizzy even reading this. Over the years, I've collected thousands of sound kits, each filled with hundreds of sounds. I strive to organize all of my sound kits in folders and use flash drives to copy this across each computer. It's essential to have your favorites on deck for easy access, and so you don't have to sift through thousands of sounds that you don't like, which can kill a session. Since making more money, I've begun to buy more VSTs. This allows me to use better sounds without having to hook up a keyboard to my interface or laptop, which could take up a lot of space. I've also been surprised many times when, after a year or so, a password screen will pop up when opening a music file because of the digital keyboard VST's secret requirements decided to leave me dumbfounded. Organization includes having a place for your VST passwords that you can easily access. It really throws off my productivity having to reset my passwords in the midst of making heat. This organization isn't just about flow in the session, but can also spill out into life. If you rarely plan or organize time to make music, don't expect it to happen. I use multiple calendars to balance family, work life, and music ambitions to ensure that a healthy mix gets done. Cloud body. It's a new day and age. I pay monthly rent to multiple cloud services, which is essential if you want to collaborate with different engineers, rappers, mixers, in order to deliver files quickly and cleanly. I usually sign up to their favorite cloud services, and if the sessions are successful and I like a service, I keep my subscription. It took me a while to get used to it, but now I embrace my newfound home. After getting comfortable, the next step is to program computers to automatically upload and download any updates. Since synchronizing my laptops, I will go days creating with Ableton and FL Studio without thinking anything of it. When I'm outside of my home or studios, I look for music to listen to, open my cloud services, and be in total surprise that everything I've imported, exported, or downloaded is right there at my fingertips. This is especially valuable if you're a traveling musician. Many times in the studio, a file will come up missing, or we will want to pull up a similar BPM file that I don't have on a flash drive. I'll simply pull up a cloud service and boom, problem solved. I've amazed many engineers and artists with my handy preparation. Geo style. Despite how much I use cloud services, I'm still old school and like to work with physical hardware whenever possible. From taking a product from computer to computer, house to house, or studio to studio, hard drives and flash drives can be a total game changer and time saver. You never know when someone, or you, may not have Wi-Fi or AirDrop to quickly download a beat or sounds or even software. More importantly though, physical storage protects your work. I can't count the number of computers I've had that glitched out and shut down on me to never come back. A great producer once told me to keep your files on 2 to 3 hard drives at all times. What's up, Tommy? I use cloud services for convenience, but it still pays to have at least a majority of your work saved in multiple physical safe spots. I often use multiple computers at once while making beats, so flash drives come in handy when bringing one piece of a track to another computer to add on additional layers with ease. Otherwise, I'm stuck emailing or airdropping myself, resorting to exporting as an MP3 first, which can be quick depending on the speed of my Wi-Fi connection. Regardless, it's comparably a loss of time, and in my case, loss of potential sound quality. Keep your beats, even if they don't sound good immediately. Some of the highlights of my career came from tracks that didn't immediately shine. Yes, sometimes I've made songs that immediately sound amazing, but like any relationship, they usually take work. I've been blown away with the results of putting in an extra 30 to 45 minutes of effort on a track when I initially wasn't moved. Even if I was very displeased and came back to it another day, I'm usually able to add elements and turn what I felt was once dead on arrival into a legit superstar. Beats are very symbolic and reflect the flow of life. I find myself not wanting to waste time, but as I grow older, I fear wasting potential more. The more I give attention and time to listen and tweak, the better the tracks tend to come out. There is some wisdom to keeping it minimal and the saying less is more, but there is a balancing act between letting songs breathe and adding elements. Adding too many elements can ruin the flow, but sometimes there's a breakthrough waiting on the other side of hard work. Don't steal beats. One thing I've never done and never will is steal a beat. It doesn't do my sound justice or my ear, and it creates problems down the line if you ever run into whoever you stole from. I read stories all the time of collaborators who got ripped off, and it's a sad thing. Even with lyrics, music to me is supposed to be self-expression, though I can see the appeal of not doing the work and still get paid. Or more ethically, getting a team better at the task. Don't get me wrong, I've been inspired by straight-up classics and aim to make something similar, even using the same drum patterns or kits. There is a difference between inspiration and theft. I've always been careful to make sure the melodies and atmosphere are completely different and my own, as I aim to create new experiences for listeners every time I open up a laptop. If you're in the business for a quick buck and steal to win, you will gain a reputation and dark cloud that will forever haunt you in your work. From the inside of industry and eventually to casual listeners, most brands never recover from the hit their reputation takes once exposed. Be very cautious. Develop multiple styles. When I first started producing, the only thing I knew about my style was that I wanted to be a sample-based producer. But in my early days working in FL Studio and then GarageBand, I knew sampling was far over my head, so I decided to stick to the basics. In 2006, This meant 808s, hi-hats, and claps. The first beat I made this way that I was proud of was this very local, fast, Bay Area, California sounding track. Soon, I'd venture into slower creeping 808-filled southern sounding beats, and then I got stuck making 80 BPM East Coast 808 and snare beats for what felt like a year straight. It was only once my cousin Floyd bought Reason and I sat with it for a few weeks that I noticed the Redrum app inside where I could load my own drum samples as long as they were WAV files. A light bulb went on. I downloaded the app Audacity and started making WAV files full of snippets of songs I wanted to sample. I had no clue how to loop sounds and figured that I'd make the smallest chops to make a realistic sounding beat from it. Those small chops sounded ridiculous, but paired with my experience of making 808, hi-hat, clap snare beats, I was actually making something close to my vision. By the time I finally got to make my beginner sample beats, I was already somewhat proficient in using the stock VSTs for simple melodies and bass lines. I had already practiced using different tempos and learned what made the beats swing in the way they do. From here, I continued to experiment with samples and learn how to properly loop them seconds at a time, chopping a song to work in any VST and matching the tunes with my own melodies. After 10 years of crafting sample-based music, I knew I didn't ever want to be a one-trick pony, so I decided to get back to struggling and learn to make better original music. For a year straight in 2017, I committed to making sample-free music. It was absolutely ego-crushing, especially now that my career had quieted down after an initial boom. It felt pretty dumb to reject what gave me success, all in the pursuit of a new sound. But after some soul-crushing trial and error was me creating some of my biggest solo instrumental hits, such as North Oakland Ecstasy, Bay Street Billionaires, Squadda B Tumblr, and more, exclusively for YouTube. I learned a new playbook for how to create music, one that I am truly grateful for. I gifted myself and the world a new sound, one that would have never been exposed if I was too scared, calculating, egotistical, and not a fan of myself enough to try. I also made more money off of that 1 year experimenting than I had in a decade plus of producing till that point. The road to get there involved some of the worst sounding music I've made since I first started, but it all paid off, literally, in the end. Looking back, the decision to take that risk was absolutely a byproduct of previous successes and feeling like I could recover from the time spent away from my tried and true sound. Without the previous trial and errors which led to the successes, I'd most likely be chasing my tail musically right now with no direction. Make beats even when not inspired. My biggest battle is with my self-proclaimed laziness. For instance, when weed is involved, sometimes I'm so inspired and motivated that I'm immediately into making grooves, though it's just as easy to get distracted by hip-hop news or social media comedians. One action I found helpful to combat this is to build a bookmarks folder in my browser for musician creator forums. I don't discriminate whether it's EDM, metal, drummers, so long as it's active and filled with actual musicians using the forum to ask questions about their craft. That way, if I'm ever cruising instead of producing, I have a safe haven of digital peers to connect with instead of the hip-hop gossipers. All of this serves a bigger purpose. Always be immersed in the music. The deeper and more accomplished I got into my practices, the easier it became to say, hey, I don't feel like doing music today. I'll chill. My number one goal lately is to kill that ideology. I'd rather work on mixing the song, messing with a loop, downloading, buying sounds, reading music books, anything productive to add quantity and practice time, rather than to waste my potential creative time. It's a delight to go to the studio and always have new tracks to rhyme on, and this would never manifest if I didn't make the time to carve new scriptures. Inspired or not, the music is what I worship, and the more time not in worship, the more deadly. Even if you don't want to make it your religion, putting in the work will pay off. If nothing else, you never know what you'll learn in that hour or what habit you'll break or what will become of the newest sample or VST you download. Furthermore, life is harder than I can fathom sometimes, and it seems the older you get, the more things generally come your way. If we wait until the coast is clear to do positive things with music, it's safe to say those times will become more and more rare as life's rainy days or years continue to hit. This can be applied to all aspects of life, so I take my own advice seriously. It's now or never. Start with a clean template. Don't put a limiter on the master. When I first started hooking up with FL Studio, I didn't know what worked sonically and didn't care. Within some months or years, I started to notice some things that were really annoying and made my beats sound different than others, in a bad way. First, I love big 808s and always have, but if I put them too close to each other, they'll turn into detuned mush, and I completely rearranged my drum patterns during programming to accommodate. It literally took me about 8 years to find a button to make them cut through each other. Looking back, it was a great learning experience working around what I didn't understand. I never had that particular problem when I worked on Reason, but I love FL Studio so much that I made beats that hit without the noise and trained my mind to be resilient and problem-solving while staying motivated and creative. Another FL Studio blunder of mine was using pre-stock templates with the limiter on the master. This gave me the illusion that my beats were banging, all while squashing the sounds into a can of sardines. I only saw the issue when experimenting with the startup templates and stumbling on the actual fully empty layout. Once I started adding sounds, it was flat and missing the intensity I was used to, bringing me to notice that the master channel was empty and the fruity limiter included in the regular layouts had been my crutch the whole time. Determined to not have a crutch, I decided to only make beats for a while without a limiter and loved how the results sounded. Clarity and balance were now the highlights of my mixes. Once I became interested in mastering, I saw how beneficial it was to have an airy mix. All the sounds had space to bang, rather than being on steroids, neck and neck, fighting for individuality after having all of its soul bled into each other. After I dropped the crazy limiters and pre-mastering, some engineers even gave props for how easy it was to mix my newly recorded verses into the sound collages. I do blame ignorance. I wanted my music to have big bangs. Now, as long as the bangs are distinct and in sync with the other sounds, the master will bang too. Note, I still make sure I have loads of bass and oftentimes a small bit of compression on the master, but gone are the days of overpowering instruments with a limiter and loud volume. Also gone are the days of clipping because I didn't use a limiter and wanted to hear some outrageous thump. Always improve your mix. I've been a computer nerd since maybe 1997 or 1998 when I was 6 or 7. My family members can probably give a more accurate age, though I know for sure it was the late 90s or elementary school, playing Schoolhouse Rock and other PC games. I still have vivid memories of giving my computer a virus through a Mortal Kombat fan page in the 90s. By the time I was a preteen in Oakland starting my rap career, I think it's safe to say I was more comfortable with doing any type of computer work than my peers. Super fast forward to our first days using Pro Tools in the early, mid-2000s. If there was no official engineer, I was able to hold it down. Those days were fun, and it became the norm, even at my own house, to spend more time recording others than myself. Having a personal background in computers, I figured it was for the best and fully embraced my role by daily studying and researching tips on how to mix in Pro Tools. Once my first group started to gain popularity online, my shoddy mixing skills gained us the tag lo-fi, which I quietly hated because I always wanted good mixes. As I write this today, I see the blessing in disguise full force. All those years playing the role of engineer totally comes into play when producing. I have always wanted the best mix I could have, no matter how intimidating or expensive the process can be. To some, the best mix may be more crisp or clear, but I truly believe it's more dependent on your personal preference and ear training. I love a clear mix, but there's a time and place for everything. I really dislike loud, crispy hi-hats that are blatant in your face. A lot of producers that I hear on the radio as of late feel different. Anything goes in music, so as long as you're aiming for perfection in your own eyes, you're making the world a better place for somebody. There's enough space in the industry for all mixes to coexist, so own your own lane and get productive. Search for sounds, and don't settle for the first ones you find. I feel like I'm always on the hunt for the sounds that best describe me as a person. In searching for the sounds, it's been easy for me to stick with the ones that make the tracks feel good. The only limiting thing about that is there's so many sounds and ways to create or sample that I may have been doing the world a disservice by sticking with the familiar. Not to mention the lack of variety in the mass collection of songs I've made. I highly recommend listening to a lot of music to find inspiration or noises that you've loved in the past. I'm always on the hunt for things I've heard in other songs and ways to take what's been done and put my own unique spin on it. From reggae snares to certain brands' guitar models, unique sample bank presets, the sky's the limit for your sound arsenal. Watching movies from a time era that I'd usually avoid has lately been helpful also. You never know where your favorite producers get their sound or inspiration, so don't be closed off. Don't be afraid to let others critique your work. Being afraid of critique will block you from releasing your music. It will leave you craving isolation and stalling out due to your fear of rejection. It can feel bad when somebody claims your music is trash or could use some help. It shouldn't mentally deter you from believing in yourself. We must find and accept the constructiveness, if any, in the words accompanying an outsider's listen of your product and continue to strive on the path to greatness. I was working with one of the most influential artists of the decade when someone else who I saw as financially rich turned down my production, saying, "I can't do nothing with this, big dog." As crushed and pressed for money as I was, I kept on and dedicated my time to making better music in my own eyes. The life of a music producer, especially in hip-hop, can feel immensely thankless, payless, and entirely ego-crushing. You're lucky to even get criticism, as it feels most of us rappers completely disregard and ignore the producer, whether the product is up to par or not. As an experienced producer with time spent and placements gained, listening to others' critiques can be even harder to digest. When ego is involved, it's the old saying about teaching old dogs new tricks. To this day, I hesitate to send my beats to execs because I'm afraid of them crushing my ego. What can someone who doesn't make music tell me about hip-hop? No matter if I'm right or wrong, I won't get far hoarding the product and not risking rejection or a traumatizing outsider's opinion about my flawless art. You must be unmovably crazy to exist as a producer, able to take in hardcore words of rejection without letting it make you stop producing. Always remember, one's trash is another's treasure. My mixing alone has turned off many websites, bloggers, and music A&Rs to no end. Through perseverance, we found our niche and spearheaded lo-fi back in 2009. Be yourself, push yourself, aim for perfection, but never wait for it. Spoiler alert, it never comes to those who wait. The car test. Use the cheapest headphones. I am immensely grateful for being a performing rap artist before pursuing a full-time career as a producer. My years as a performing artist, traveling the world, going venue to venue and sound system to sound system, opened my ears to the tracks we brought to perform. During our instrumental days, using other artists' beats exclusively, I noticed that while most were industry standard sounding, with some of them literally being the latest hits, they all varied in quality of production. Some beats were louder than others, and some more distorted, and the sound corresponded to the websites the beats came from. Some websites had more official rips, shout out to J Arms, while other ones I download through BearShare or other illegal softwares would be lower volume, less bass, you name it. As a teenager focused on rap, it was easy to ignore, but once we were working with more experienced producers, and these were side by side with my own beats, my heart was frequently broken. I couldn't even imagine figuring out what the root causes were. Was it a lack of mastering? Bad mix? Both? Once I started to bring my instrumentals into big studios, the sound gap was even more noticeable, with my tracks missing a lot of thump, or specifically, crazy boosted mids. Eventually, I invested in different headphones and speakers, which is when things started to make more sense. When you're isolated with one source of playback, you truly miss the full picture of what's going on musically in your tracks. This is why the car test is a common practice with artists. It gives you a different perspective on the mix. I'll book out time at a rehearsal studio to learn which sounds translated to club-style speakers, and even making beats using stock laptop speakers without headphones reveals small truths that will help you hear your tracks. Investing in different headphones, speakers, and environments to run your sounds through is one of the best ideas I've come across as a musician, next to befriending a lawyer. Try, at times, to spend more than 20 minutes. I am very guilty of creating a loop or sound that I really like, feeling it's complete immediately, and using it as is. This isn't wrong, but my history has taught me that I've sometimes limited my production in doing so. I have a great mixing engineer named Robert Kirby, who, when we met up for the first time, would add the smallest tweaks and sometimes bigger adjustments, taking the beat to another level. There have been plenty of other times where I took advantage of some free time by building up an older beat or two. What I found at the end of the hour was my work had improved, taking on more unique and interesting layers than what I usually would have crafted. I do agree that a lot of the time, it rarely takes longer than an hour to make something solid, but I have experienced how layering the work pays off. Another great tip I want to give is to take time away from the finished product and come back in a week or so. My latest instrumental albums consist of me making the original track list after maybe a month or two, then coming back month to month and making a ton of edits. I didn't always start this way. Back when I was a newer artist, I was proud to make 20-minute beats and rush to release them for compliments and to see the work land on countless websites. I can only imagine how much cooler some of those tracks may have been with a bit more time invested. Don't chase instant gratification. You'll be happier with your work in the end if you put a little more effort now. Always invest money. Investing money into your music is the shortest route to stardom. All of it helps, whether it be promotional efforts like back in 2008 when I paid for that pip.com sponsorship so anyone can download the music free, or paying a digital artist from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, who I met on MySpace to design my debut mixtape cover, or the endless thousands I spent in high-end recording studios. The things I've learned while spending money would never have come otherwise. In this new day and age, there are so many free plugins and free keyboard apps for computers that it is pretty easy to get by on a non-existent budget. I applaud anyone who makes it happen with what they have, though I strongly recommend at least having an open mind about spending money to further your journey. While I have indeed benefited from receiving free products, my biggest breakthrough as a producer came from my cousin spending his cold hard cash on the Reason software and allowing me to use it with him. Every DAW comes with great stock plugins, but I will say that my sound has evolved leagues by simply paying $30 to $100 for a sound plugin or two. I'm in love with Echo Boy. The quality of your logo, album covers, and any other associated art does massive good for your brand. So unless you found a way to teach yourself on a free program or someone's license of a paid one, you're going to have to pay to play. There's certainly things I haven't paid for, like a slot on the mixtape or time to perform during the show, but I wouldn't be too quick to rule it out if it makes sense for where you are in your career and where you're seeking to go. I luckily had some connections in my early days of producing, but honestly, if I could have afforded to buy a vocal appearance from a known star and release the song myself to have a track produced by me with someone big, Lord knows I'd do it. I never wanted a non-music 9-to-5 job, but in my days where I spent most of my days doing that, one of the main things giving me joy was knowing how I'd invest the remainder of my checks on music. I was able to buy countless laptops and fill them up with programs and plugins that I now have for life. I bought more keyboards and MIDI controllers than I can remember. All of these things have helped my productivity and expanded my sound. Promote yourself and get heard. When I first started making beats, I felt invincible. I knew I was an amateur compared to the singles produced by Polo the Don, Zaytoven, and others, but I still had so much more confidence and drive than even today somehow. I immediately went to my neighborhood artists and spammed my work, telling them that I had beats for sale and to get the word around. While nobody bought any beats from me, I still felt like a young Kanye getting in cards and listening to my beats with friends. What's up, little? It could have been because I was a fresh 10th grade dropout and I felt my life depended on me getting something going. But I know that it was also my love for the legacy of music and needing to etch my mark. It was 2007, 2008, and I was still listening to albums like Diplomatic Immunity by the Diplomats, Return to the 36 Chambers by Old Dirty Bastard, and Devil's Rejects 36 Zips by the Jacka and Ampachino, urging myself to outdo them. I knew there was no way to outdo them by hoarding my beats on my laptop and not getting them to known rappers. While I didn't go out and search for Jay-Z's office address during my first year of producing, I still made it a point to not waste time and get myself established in a way I was comfortable with. At the time, that meant working with my network of neighborhood rappers who would come to my house daily to record on my beats. Sometimes people would reject my more half-baked beats, but that didn't matter because I could feel my dreams becoming a reality. Things started to pick up when my man DZD, who I was knee-deep producing for, helped me get with Lil B. A year or two after making tracks for Lil B and landing on his 6 Kiss album, he joined forces with Soulja Boy, and I felt like I was on my way with them both. Even though nothing came out of their union involving me, the passion of the moves being made transferred energy into my own brand, and my group got some notoriety pretty quickly after. I'm slowly learning that energy is everything, and without mixing energy with your alikes, the energy will surely die or rest dormant in your head. I can't say I enjoy putting myself out there or that I feel like I'm always as good as my contemporaries, but I refuse to let my ideas die without giving them a shot. As I write this, I'm on my 15th year of making beats, which is crazy unreal. I still haven't accomplished all of my music goals, and I like to think this is in part due to me not getting out of my comfort zone and risking rejection. Rejection is absolutely a part of the process, and I'm naturally not a fan of it by a long shot. Still, I train my brain to accept and crave it, because by avoiding rejection, I'm really just avoiding success. Always think about business. Back when I first started making beats in 2007, the industry was in a far different place. Streaming did not exist, but iTunes still felt pretty brand new. CD sales were declining, and internet downloads, legal or pirated, were the #1 hub for getting music. To listen, you had to buy an MP3 player, and around the time I made my first beat, phones had just started selling ringtones. In those days, the only way I could consider or even imagine getting paid for production was selling the beat itself, hand to hand. That approach felt right, though it didn't make me much money at all, so I adjusted and worked with artists who I believed in instead for free, which helped me build my name up and gave insight into the artist-producer relationship. Thankfully, I always had money on my mind, and even in the early days, I looked at myself giving the beats away as an advance on what would come from their careers later on. I held the idea that labels paid producers royalties, but the physical realization of results felt worlds away back in 2007. But as the world changed with streaming, I struggled to conceptualize how to eat off my work. Thankfully, with a little research and finding websites like Songtrust that collects your money from writing credits and websites like DistroKid that does this for the streams itself, I started to get back into my groove. Without thinking of music as a business though, none of this would matter. I imagine there's tons of producers giving away beats and not getting paid from the upfront sale or the songs being sold or played. As much as I may not like this quote, it rings true. You only get what you negotiate. I went through a decade of providing classics to YouTube and artists' albums without receiving a dime, and am now starting to finally get myself paid from it. You have to go and get your own compensation. I'd advise hiring a lawyer to at least help build your confidence in actually having a chance at getting your pay. Upgrade your sound. Being a producer long-term is a great goal, though we must accept that music changes. Sounds change. The way things get ingested change. Influences change, and the business changes. As it is doing so, in my opinion, it's most beneficial and fun to adapt your art to the times too. I wouldn't suggest completely changing your sound with every new trend, though I wouldn't say that it would be a guaranteed failure either. The fact is, at least on the business side, it's usually about the new hot sound. With that being said, the legends continue to create their own path, breaking new ground whatever the climate is of the world. I don't believe a legend can stay a legend by having the same formula without tweaks or improvements, new elements, and open-minded creating to go with the brand. I used to fear change because I didn't want to mess up a good thing, which isn't a horrible idea. When something is working for you, it's absolutely a risk to do something different, especially if things like paying your rent depend on it. But so is staying still when the world is constantly changing. A great way to adapt is to try new sounds, equipment, ways of songwriting, engineers, etc., which stands to add to the legacy and gives your audience a refreshing touch to what they already love. I look at adding new elements to my production as introducing a new flavor of donut to my beloved Krispy Kreme empire, rather than arranging my Krispy Kreme dynasty to compete with Taco Bell. I now fear people not wanting to listen to anything new I make because it's not breaking new grounds or even competing with my previous works. I personally love listening to an experienced artist because I know what I'm going to hear, and if I'm lucky, I'll get some surprises here and there. If there's no element of surprise or special addition or twist to a product, after a while I'll lose interest and won't listen again until I'm convinced the entertainment is entertaining again. On the flip side, if I'm going to an artist for cold brew coffee and I get lemonade too many times, no matter how entertaining it is, I won't go back. I came to you for a cold brew. It's a fine balance to straddle, but well worth it if being a musician is where you want to be in life. Don't be scared to collaborate. I haven't spent a lot of time collaborating on production with other producers, strictly because I didn't know many coming up. The only other producers I knew wrote songs also, so we'd usually collaborate on the vocal end. I feel like any reservations about collaborating with others mostly comes from insecurity within myself as a producer. Literally today, in the midst of writing this, I collaborated with a fellow producer and the beat came together full of life with a different mix style than I would ever do. What up, Tyrell? This fellow producer gave me so many gems of advice that I wouldn't have thought of and validated a few ideas that I wasn't too secure about previously. Throughout the years, I've had to thank various musicians for sharing their sounds with me, and I am very quick to do the same for them. My first collaboration with the producer was with my cousin, Way Better, who is very gifted on the piano and would add a musical element that I only recently began to experiment with. Taking turns and adding layers gave me a new perspective on what makes a track work and also what I didn't like. Another notable production collaboration was also with family, when my little brother, Shajia, shocked me pretty big one day. I invited him to my house, and knowing he produces too, I asked him to try to work on one of my tracks. He did some stuff on FL Studio, and I still don't know where he found the button to do it. If I was to guess, it was some automation he programmed and added crazy effects to the sample I used. I sometimes am weary of showing other producers my tricks and secrets, but sometimes you have to give something to get something. As long as you like the producer and feel like it could be an even trade-off, I'd say go for it. Study the greats. I hear a lot of talk about people stealing styles and de-writing and things of that nature, like being inspired and influenced by an artist is a crime. Every artist has been influenced and inspired by somebody else's art at one point in time or the next. If there's any artist that says that that's not true, then consider them inspired by the atrocity of artists to the point that they had to take matters into their own hands. I may not respect or like an artist as a person enough to claim they are my hero or idol, but I will never deny the fact that I grew up listening and breathing music, and the players of said game have made a huge impact on me. I wouldn't know what a beat is without these men and women. I wouldn't know how to start a song or stop a song without the templates laid before me by the ones who took the risk of experimenting or stealing from someone else. It's all the same to me because I ingested it the same. If you're not studying the people you consider great, you're missing out on a lot of good entertainment and great lessons in how to make life move with audio. Some artists are so great that you can learn about life in general through their career or the music alone. Whether you are aiming to be a public figure or an innovative shadow, I do think it's best to study the past and present as if you're going to be in their same position one day. We're all human and more or less want the same things out of having a music career. Why not learn from the successes and trials of the people who've done this before? Bonus points happen if you happen to run into any of these people and you're already aware about who they present themselves as and what they've already brought into the world. When I allow myself to be inspired by people, it always brings the best out of me, since we're all operating from the same energy, no matter the color of it. Especially in the age of YouTube and nonstop accessibility of information, your time can be spent like you're in school by looking into the lives and work of your favorites and even the ones you really dislike. There's always more to learn. Be aware of dependence on drugs to enhance your sound and workflow. Use drugs, don't abuse them. Now, I'd be lying if I said drugs can't have a positive effect on your productivity, sound, and overall motivation. When I was in the prime of my first group, I pretty much solely depended on a combination of marijuana, downers, uppers, and then alcohol to perform and make music. My addiction reached its all-time low after about 6 years. I was releasing music that was underdeveloped and was personally at a point where the main motivation for creating was to buy more of my above combination. It wasn't always that way, though. The year I began making beats, I did smoke a little weed. I didn't have enough money to build a habit like I did later on. But there were absolutely more sober days than that. My motivation was strictly making as many beats as I could to build my skill in business. There was no pressure for me to be great, only to become what I knew I wanted to be and had the talent for. Even later on in my career, one of my biggest verses I recorded at the time, on A$AP Rocky's first mixtape, Live Love A$AP, I wrote completely sober. I did that on purpose to be able to really think through what I wanted to say and not feel like I cheated myself out of clarity. Another one of my more loved songs that came later after that, I Learned, released through Lil B's Bass World Records, I also wrote completely sober. I feel like the quality of thought and expression is way more pure and translates to listeners better, though much harder mentally to express. My drug usage comes from anxiety, insecurity, and a lot of times boredom, and the arrogance from knowing that I'm a fantastic artist no matter what. I was absolutely influenced by a lot of supposed drug user artists, so I felt that I had proof that it would only make my records better. There's nothing wrong with doing some mind-altering stuff to get some gold out. Problem becomes when you feel like you need it to truly be great and let the drugs be the main speaker. Not to mention the many, many horrible side effects of drugs. When I was a huge promethazine cough syrup user, it got to the point where I would start stuttering when recording vocals. When I was a big marijuana abuser, I couldn't sound hyped to save my life, and my breath control was non-existent. When I drink alcohol, forget about it. I have no focus or longevity in my studio sessions, and I'm ready for bed pretty shortly after drinking. Alcohol is almost the worst for me. I feel like I don't have a lot to say when I drink, which is crazy, considering that drunks are usually portrayed as motor mouths. I never got deep into cocaine or any other drugs, and I plan to stay that way. Drugs become a huge financial stressor and also end up wearing you down physically and mentally, making being a full-time artist unbearable without the free time to recover. Every time I go into a heavy sober phase, I find myself tons more productive, able to record quality pieces of music back to back. As a rapper, I could easily make 4 to 5 songs a day sober. As a producer, I easily make the same amount of beats. During my drug usage moments, I do get lightning in a bottle moments where I can make 3 hot songs, but the complicated cost of it at my age and aim as an artist isn't worth it. I admit, I do love substances, but I believe being honest about your vices is the best way to keep them under control. It's easy to make great music on drugs, so it's even easier to believe you need them to sustain a career, though I promise to you and myself that it doesn't have to be that way. You're even more impactful, efficient, and consistent when you are sober. There's plenty of other alternatives you can use to break the ice of being nervous or feeling dry in the booth or behind the boards. Believing in the natural you is essential in the music business. Never forget or be ashamed. You were born this way. Steady activity. The only way I feel productive is to partake in some sort of activity every day. If you're not active every day, please spend no fewer than 2 days out of the week without making movement in your career. Even a quick 10-minute loop counts. Connecting dots or networking and conducting meetings has got to be a form of working also. Being productive is the energy force that keeps you in the world of being a producer. In a livable world, I'm at least making a beat a day. If not, then I'm recording or editing a song, downloading sounds, negotiating plans with others, or scheduling appearances and releases. Posting to advertise on social media, reading books by established artists, these all count as productivity to me. The longer you're inactive, the more alien it is to get back in the game. When I study music's history, I'm pretty disturbed how fast things go in a year. It's not unusual that my favorite song one year will be by an artist I won't ever hear of again in any year after. The predominant sounds and styles I love from songs of one year may completely disappear the year after. Time moves fast in general, but in music, it feels maybe 3 times that speed. You'll benefit deeply from taking advantage of all the time that you have and putting in the work. Without the work, it's only in our head and not yet in the books. Closing thoughts. Thank you for choosing to read this and supporting yourself as you travel on the journey of living as an artist. I didn't get here alone and wouldn't be able to be the same producer today without the help of loving and honest people in my corner. Whether you make $1 million, billion, or $3.99 in your career, know that regardless, this life is temporary. If being an artist is your calling, please answer the phone right now and commit until the day you drop. If you're in this for the hustle, keep hustling. Surround yourself with the legal team and people that have your back, because the industry can be full of surprises for the hustlers and the pure artists alike. I'm very blessed and grateful to have lived through the moments I've experienced with my greats. We're all the same. Some stumble on better opportunities, some are born into a position, and some strategize and persist their way into what they consider success. Life is love. Strive to keep your mind and heart focused on the positive, and you'll go a lot further. Or at least have way less people living with bad experiences caused by you. Love yourself, be smart, and spread love by making music. Disclaimer: everything written in this book is based on opinion. Take what resonates and discard what is false to you.